All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday. Woohoo! It's the weekend. It is December 17th, 2010. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Hope you had a great week and an even lovelier weekend in store for you. But hopefully to start off that nice weekend, we have an awesome show in store for you with Shaman Avalon Sakti tonight. We're going to be talking about sacred plants and higher consciousness. Sakti, perhaps you have heard her here before, talking about dream journeys and the divine feminine and masculine, soul fragmentation and retrieval. But if you have not heard her, please go check out the archives over at truthbrigade.org. And while you're there, check out the new changes in the forum. And please don't forget to give us suggestions. It's a lot of work for someone who really knows nothing about internet land. But I'm learning. Anyways, tonight's topic is sacred plants, and she has a wonderful article. I mean, very in-depth information. It's probably another one of those 33-page articles, and that's over at her website, wayofthewildrose.com, but you need to put a dash in between each of those words. That's way-of-the-wild-rose.com, but I'll be posting that link and many others over in the text chat if you'd like to join us over at truthbrigade.com. And I heard my favorite cute little giggle, so Shakti's here a minute early to join us. How are you doing tonight, honey?
Great, I'm in great spirit.
Yay! Well, maybe some of that'll rub off on us, or me particularly.
Hopefully.
Yay! All right, well, how's the weather treating you? You're out in the UK. How's the winter going?
It's very cold, but I've been to colder places, so I'm holding up very well here.
Excellent. All righty. Well, big topic tonight. Of course, this is one of your specialty as a shaman. You work with sacred plants and such all the time. You have an extensive knowledge about this. But we have just a couple seconds before break. But let me ask you this. Aren't all plants sacred?
Absolutely. All plants are sacred, and every plant has something to offer to man. It's just sometimes we don't know. We trample over them and we think they are weeds, and these may be plants that have great healing power. But my particular interest for today's show is sacred plants and consciousness, so I would like to speak about those plants that affect human consciousness the most.
Ah, we like that. All right, Sakti, it's that time, but we're going to be right back after this short break, so stay tuned. Shaman Avalon Sakti here on Truth Brigade Radio. Nice way to start off the show tonight about sacred plants. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. If you would like to join us for the text chat tonight, that's over at truthbrigade.com. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call at 402-237-2525. That's 402-AFR-2525. Our special guest tonight, Shaman Avalon Sakti, going to talk about sacred plants and higher consciousness. Always so good to have you here, honey. But I guess we kind of talked about that in the intro. But let me ask you this. There's been a few pieces of news recently, speaking of sacred plants. And Miley Cyrus, I think her stage name or something is Hannah Montana. Forgive me, I don't keep up with that stuff. But they recently put out an article claiming that she was smoking Salvia divinorum, on video. And, you know, it just makes me wonder, why would they put this out there? Because anyone who knows anything about Salvia knows, number one, It is not a party drug, and if you do choose to partake, you certainly aren't going to be screaming and playing and drinking with your friends, and it just, I don't know. I don't know if you're familiar with the article and those videos, but what do you think of that?
Well, I'm neither familiar with the celebrity nor with the article, but I am familiar with Salvia divinorum. And it is one of the teacher plants. I personally find it's a very quiet and meditative plant, and in ceremonies that I have taken part in, I found that nobody ever screamed or freaked out. People were sitting quietly, and actually the most common complaint was that nothing was happening.
Yeah,
Because
were they drinking alcohol and just like a typical party scenario? Okay, I didn't think so.
They had to fast. They had to fast a few hours before the ceremony, and it was done in silence after a blessing of the pipes. And then we all sat very quietly together and meditated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know why, but are they trying to make it look like a party drug or something to maybe divert people from using it? Or, I mean, I don't know. Here in the U.S., it's illegal, I believe, in 15 states right now. But, I mean, obviously there's something going on with why they would publicize it. But, I mean, anyone who saw the video, and I posted the link over in the text chat at truthbrigade.com so you can watch with your own eyes. But, I mean, there is no way that they were smoking, that she was smoking salvia out of a bong too, with her beer.
Actually, this is the topic that I wanted to speak about, but I think we should start it at the beginning, because when you want to know why are they spreading this propaganda, then you have to first understand what the sacred plants are actually doing. And
absolutely.
Then you understand why they suddenly are being banned, and why all this disinfo and scaring people with it. Because there's an agenda and there's a reason. Sacred plants affect our consciousness. They don't affect it in a way that they alter it, but rather you could say there is a unified consciousness that connects all of us, the whole of mankind, and not just mankind, but also the plants and animals on the planet. We are all part of that one great consciousness. And this is our natural state, but we do not normally perceive it because we have too many blocks. These blocks are from living from the left brain, which is what is being enforced in our education system, and from having been told false beliefs since we were very young. A lot of children, for example, have their spirit friends that they're talking to, but the parents then drag them to the psychologist. So basically the reality that we perceive is just like the tip of the iceberg. And the greater part of reality, which is our normal, human heritage. It's what we were made for, to perceive the whole of reality, but we are looking like through a keyhole, and we're seeing a tiny, tiny part of reality only, and then we're basing our conclusions on that. Now, the sacred plants, what they do is, first of all, they remove conditioning. When you take sacred plants in the correct shamanic way, in a sacred way, not in a I want to have a trip way, then they start to remove all your conditioning, religious conditioning, social conditioning, and they tear basically the veils of false perception off your eyes so that you can perceive reality as it really is. For some people this comes as an utter shock, and some people can't handle it. That's why one has to be prepared emotionally, and one has to also be prepared to let go of anything that isn't truth. If you don't like to see the truth and you're a person who chooses to be in denial, please don't take the sacred plants, because you're going to have a terrible time with them.
Yeah, well, you mentioned preparation or being prepared, but can you tell us what that entails? How does one prepare themselves for an experience like that?
It depends on what plant you are taking. For some plants, the preparation is a lot more serious than for others. Generally, plants that, some shamans take poisonous power plants, but let's leave that topic out for now. Let's talk about plants like because that is a can of worms. It can be done. I have done it. And it is very much okay if you know what you're doing, but if you don't, then you might be dead. But there are other plants like ayahuasca, for example. That is a plant that needs a very serious preparation because you're going on a very deep journey to the innermost part of yourself, and you're going to have the truths of the universe revealed to you. And if you're not ready, if your mind is very brittle and unflexible, then it might crack a little. It's never doing any. It never does any dangerous damage, but it leaves people sometimes shell-shocked if they were not prepared. So the proper preparation is, well, there is a physical preparation that should normally actually be for a whole week with good diet. You have to abstain from a lot of things like salty foods, oily foods, meat. And you should also be abstaining from sex, actually, because it's a different type of energy than what you need for the sacred plant, and generally a kind of sacrifice is required. So it's not being undisciplined. I'm not even mentioning junk foods.
So
obviously you should be on a healthy diet. If we listed everything you shouldn't take, it would be a long list. Basically, take vegetables and take fruits and eat a light diet and not processed, as little processed as possible.
So try to get as close to that natural state as you can, right?
Yeah, you should also really not take salty food. I never salt. I don't use salt for cooking at all. And haven't for what I don't know how long.
That's some of the. Okay, so you mentioned some of the physical preparation, and you're right. If we talked about that, it could be a whole nother show. But also, I think what's probably even more essential than that is the mental, spiritual, and emotional preparation, and of course your intent. Yeah, and the intent is very important. As I mention that all the time, because intent is what carries us to our goals. And if we don't have a clear intent, then we are like a ship that's floating at sea. So yes, I would think that if you do this kind of thing, first of all, you have to have a purpose in mind. There is either some kind of healing that you seek, physical, emotional. There is clarity that you seek your life path or about yourself and or the universe and your place, your purpose, why you're here. Something in this direction is normally your purpose, why you're doing it. You have to be clear on your purpose and not just, hey, well, my friend has done it, I want to do it as well. And then, of course, is to be aware that what you're doing is something very serious and very sacred. Ayahuasca, for example, is called the death wine, not because it's going to kill you, but because it quite often puts you through a death experience. Or at least the death of the ego.
The ego always bounces back, but it might be temporarily cut down a little.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it is actually quite often, with ayahuasca, quite often it puts you through a death experience that will feel like you are physically dying. And there's a reason for that, because our fear of death is our greatest block. For a shaman, if you want to journey in the other world, you cannot go to all places, and you might find journeying difficult until you got over the fear of death. It's this fear of losing yourself, the fear of losing your body, of not being able to come back. A lot of people have that. So the reason why we as a society or the human race at the moment are so stuck in this negativity is because we are all really cowardly. If we stood up and did the right thing, we would solve the problems we're having in no time, but we don't do it because we're afraid that something could happen to us, like we could get kidnapped and killed, and everybody is really afraid. It's fear. And the ultimate fear, that is the root of all other fears, is death. So ayahuasca gets that out of the way. Once you get over the death fear, and you know there is really no death, then everything else in life gets a lot easier.
Okay, I see. All right. Now, you mentioned, okay, you, of course, being a shaman, you know a whole lot about plants, but, you know, you list, of course, that there are 4 different uses, you know, the different types of sacred plants, food plants, journey plant or dream plants, etc. Can you tell us about the different types and what they might be used for?
Well, there are plants that have been eaten in sacred rituals, and these plants nourish us, not just our bodies but also our spirits. For example, the sacred corn is one of those plants that's been sacred to the Native Americans, but also in other cultures. And what we find now is that particularly those plants, the sacred food plants, are actually being targeted and being turned into GM plants.
Yeah, corn for sure. Okay.
And wheat, for example, was sacred to the goddess Isis, and personally I find that wheat is actually a very strengthening and good plant, and the reason why so many people are reacting to it is because we used to have so many different types of wheat, and they have been reduced to just a few. Lots of it is locked up in the seed vault, of course, that we will never have any access to. And of course these allergies, where they originate, there's been information being put out that the vaccinations have a lot to do with leaky bowel syndrome, and that then leads to whatever has been in your guts on the day that you got vaccinated to become an allergen.
Oh, yeah, plus there are pesticides and such as well. I mean, we're not getting clean corn and wheat or pretty much clean anything unless you're doing it yourself.
It's getting more and more difficult, and it's really a pity because these plants are special, especially corn is a very, very good plant. So these are the sacred food plants that have been eaten during rituals, and some of them, like corn, whatever you charge them with in ritual will actually then go in your DNA.
Oh. Okay, let me ask you this. I heard about people, before they plant the seeds, put it in their mouth and get the saliva on it, and then it'll kind of be programmed to your DNA. Do you know anything about that?
It makes sense, because it makes a connection. I've not heard of this before, but it does make sense to me.
I'm trying it this spring. I'll let you know how it works if we have special Christie corn plants. Okay, so corn and wheat you mentioned. What other sacred food plants are used in ceremony?
Well, not everything. Tobacco is one of the sacred plants. It's not exactly a food. You don't eat it, but it has healing properties, and I mentioned it in my article because it has also been altered, and now it's become a very negative plant. And again, it's one of the plants, but that is not true for the Amazonian tobacco that you can still get, which is unaltered. But again, it's one of these plants, like many plants, basically connect with our consciousness. So what you think of while you're preparing the plants will actually go in the plants. And this has been known in many, many cultures.
Absolutely. Or same with cooking, really. I mean, any time you're working on something, you're putting your energy into it. So my kitchen, the main ingredient is love, and even in my homemade tobacco.
Yeah. It's especially true when you're baking bread with the grains. In the Vedic tradition, they believe that twice in a month, at a particular day, the grains absorb sins, and then they shouldn't be eaten. And in some groups of people, like the Hare Krishna people, they only eat bread that was baked by the devotees, because, while they baking it, then they chanting songs to Krishna, say, and then this energy goes in the bread. And when we're eating the commercially made bread that's been made by machines and the people maybe were cursing and angry and in bad mood on that day, all these energies go in there. And then it isn't really health-giving anymore.
Okay. All right. Totally understand. Okay, so sacred food plants, corn, wheat, what about pumpkins?
I mean, in every culture, people had their special plants, yeah?
Okay.
It's not just restricted to these 2 or 3. I don't know in which country the pumpkin was sacred.
From what I understand, the natives used it tremendously, pumpkins, and of course still do here. But I mean, there's so much nutrition. You can eat the whole thing. Pumpkin flour. I mean, it's just pumpkin. Well, back to what I asked you from the beginning. Aren't all plants sacred? So I guess it just depends on your beliefs or your traditions, right?
All plants are sacred, and if you can connect, you can find out the power of any individual plant and start working with it.
Okay. Hold that right there, and then you can tell us how we can work on that and start working with our sacred plants. Avalon Shaman Sakti here on Truth Brigade Radio. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com with Shaman Avalon Sakti tonight, talking about sacred plants and higher consciousness. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call at 402-237-2525. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at truthbrigade.com. Sakti, before we went to break, we left off on how one can learn to connect with plants maybe that they resonate with. Can you give us some tips on how we can find plants sacred to us?
Yeah, just go out in nature, in the forest or someplace, and just go there with the intention to find a plant that wants to work with you and that you could gain as an ally. And then just walk and see where you're being drawn. And when you find a plant, then sit down in front of the plant and just look at it for a while. And be completely silent inside and outside. Just look at the plant and absorb its appearance and what that means to you, and then let it speak to you. And you can touch a leaf or a part of the plant gently to make a connection. And then close your eyes and meditate, and the plant will actually speak to you. You're not going to hear it audibly loud, but you will hear it very clearly in your mind if you know how to listen. And you can let the plant tell you about itself, what it does, how it can work with you. For some people this will be easy, and some people need to train a little bit. It depends on whether you already know how to listen to your intuition, whether you know how to meditate, or whether this is all completely new territory for you. Then when the plant gives permission, then you can take a part of the plant with you, and if you know that the plant is edible and not poisonous, you can eat a little.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we had to follow the rules of foraging. Okay, so we must follow the rules of foraging then, and probably not stick it in our mouth unless we are confident that it is not poisonous.
It's very strange with me. There was one time I was walking in the woods, and I picked some things that I wanted for some shamanic work, and I picked a small bit of ivy, and I didn't know at that time that ivy is poisonous. It wasn't poison ivy, it was just ivy. And as I was holding something else, I was trying to take a branch. I stuck the ivy in my mouth temporarily, and some of the juice got on my tongue, and I knew instantly that it was poisonous. I just know it from the taste. And the other strange thing that I find with myself, that if it's poisonous, it gives me a boost.
Okay.
I feel an instant. I always find that the poisonous plants to me is like very familiar, and it feels like not a kick that you get from something like having caffeine. It's just like it's like a recognition. I know it. I know it's poisonous, and it does me good. It seems to augment my power.
Yeah, well, I mean, even Paracelsus and so, I mean, they all used Hippocrates. I mean, we can go on and on. They all used what today we call poisonous plants. And I think there's a lot of fear-mongering going on with that. I mean, just because you touch a plant that somebody deems poisonous doesn't mean you're going to die. And if you accidentally, stick it in your mouth or whatever, I mean, one little drop or little leaf is not going to kill you.
No, not normally. And
okay, yeah.
I mean, if you have a belief system.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But if you put that fear aside, I mean, if you're out there trying to find your plant, and, I'll tell you a little experience I had, and my intention was not to find a sacred plant. I just happened to be outside, and this weed, which happened to be a plantain, literally started dancing for me. Okay, no bugs, no wind, no anything, and there were 4 people around because I was staring at it, and I'm like, at first I was looking around thinking, am I hallucinating? Am I the only one seeing this? And everyone else saw it, and we just stood there in wonderment. But, the thing is about the fear and poisonous plants, this and that, look, if you've meditated with your plant and you're out in the forest and such, and you really have the desire to stick it in your mouth or pick it up, go for it, I say.
Well, it's your body, so you have to be responsible. It's my body, and I decide what goes in it, and no government and nobody can tell me what I can and cannot take. That's alone my decision.
Amen. Amen. All right.
Exactly. As long as it's still my body, I decide.
Yes.
And I got it from God, and there should be no complaint from the government about that.
Yeah, well, except for the government is supposed to be our new God, and it's just us that didn't get the memo.
Yeah, I think you're very true there, Christie. I'm afraid that is truth, what you've spoken.
Yeah. Hate it when I do that.
So,
okay. Yeah, if you can give us more points to connect with our plans. Say we're brand new to this, and we've never even been in a forest alone. Maybe we can, kind of do the beginner's guide.
Well, I hope that you won't be afraid of being in a forest. I couldn't imagine how bad that would be. Then if you're afraid of being in the forest, then maybe you just have to go to a meadow by the side of the forest and look for a flower or a little herb or something that you can communicate with.
There you go.
If you're fearful and you're afraid of something bad happening to you, then just stay in a place where there's other people with you, but you shouldn't have somebody with you when you meditate, because that is going to distract you. So you can go with a group of people, and you can be on a big meadow, and one is sitting here and the other 100 meters away, but don't have your boyfriend right next to you. You're not going to meditate on that plant. And the other thing is that once you can choose a plant in the beginning. If you're afraid of that you might eat something poisonous, choose something that you like, that it's not poisonous, like a rose or chamomile or lavender, something like that, and connect with this to start with, to practice with. And then once, if you know that this plant can be eaten and you take a little bit of it internal, then you can actually do a shamanic journey with it. You can go in the underworld once you've eaten it. And in the underworld, you can find the spirit of the plant. And it will not normally look exactly like a plant. It will look like some kind of being. It may be very different from the plant. So you have to recognize the spirit of the plant, not by the look of it, but by the resonance. And then you can speak to the spirit of the plant, and you can ask in which ways it would like to work with you. And you can ask it whether it wants to be your ally, and if it agrees, then you can take it with you the way that you would take a power animal with you and bring it back to your safe place, and then you have made a connection.
Okay. Someone just saying here on the text chat they love to eat roses, and, I was thinking of dandelions. I don't know about you, Shakti, but when I grew up, we were told that all of that is poisonous. I mean, even dandelions, clover, chickweed, everything that was in our lawn, if it wasn't grass, it was poisonous, therefore we had to kill it.
I wasn't told such nonsense, fortunately.
Good. All right, good. So you got an earlier start than those of us who did grow up that way.
And maybe also cultural, because I grew up in Germany, and I think there is still some herb lore, some ancient herb lore there. We would actually go and collect things. My mother still puts daisies in her potato salad. And we collected dandelion leaves because people in Germany do seem to know that they are good for the liver and that they cleanse your body. When they were young, we put them in salads and ate them. When they're a bit older, then they get more bitter, so it is still edible, but maybe not so pleasant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you started off, you didn't have those fear of weeds and herbs and things that maybe some of us who grew up in cities and suburban areas
No,
only
mushrooms. Mushrooms was the only thing, because obviously there are some very poisonous mushrooms, and mushroom poisoning is not something to joke about. And my father used to collect mushrooms. He took us to the woods once, and I remember I was very small, and he got this whole basket full of mushrooms, and he thought he knew what he was doing. And in the middle of the woods, suddenly this old woman manifested. I still believe till this day that she was a spirit. Old women like this don't go deep in the forest, and she really looked like, like the goddess appears when she wants to test you in her crone aspect. And she looked at my father's basket, and she threw several ones of the mushrooms out and explained to him that they were poisonous. This is what he would have prepared for us afterwards.
Funny. It's just so silly. We're brought up to fear Mother Nature. I think I probably shared with you the first time someone suggested that I drink dandelion tea, and I'm like, huh? What are you smoking? And pretty please, can I have some? But she understood. That's kind of how we grew up, and yeah. So, okay. Let me ask you this: what are some of the sacred herbs or food or plants, that you like to work with, and how did you stumble across them?
Okay, so let's get the list down. Ayahuasca was the first one I started with. And then you might know Jurima, because it's sometimes used together with ayahuasca. Murapuama, which is another rainforest plant, is also one of them. And then I've done Salvia divinorum that you mentioned before. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them. And what else? Thorn apple, which you call datura.
Yes, it's datura out here. Moonflower, even devil's trumpet, devil's weed. Mandrake, I have a special connection with also, and then there's a poisonous plant, henbane. What is that called? Henbane. Henbane? Henbane. Yeah, it's called henbane because it was poisonous to chickens. You could kill a chicken with it, and why it was called henbane. Are those the ones? Mandrake, henbane. That's pretty. Okay, I get to learn a new one. That is beautiful, though, this henbane. So, the henbane it's a death plant. It'll put you through a death initiation. And the only reason why I took it is because I was told by the goddess, actually. Otherwise, by myself, I wouldn't have. And I have done a death initiation once in the woods where I had to take several poisonous plants and stay overnight in the woods by myself. Nice. And that was pretty heavy duty, yes. Wow, I can only imagine. It was a very interesting experience, as it was also winter, and I was snowed in the morning. I was sleeping out there in a sleeping bag, really.
And also there were wild pigs, and they came in the night.
Oh my God, were they nice wild pigs?
I tell you, I just prayed that they wouldn't see me, and I was just telling them, go away in my mind, and because they can be dangerous. They can be really dangerous.
Okay.
But it was it was an experience, and that was with 3 of those plants. I started off with ayahuasca. I always believed that you can't be a real shaman until you've done ayahuasca at least once. Unfortunately, when I did it the first time, I did it with one of these false shamans who didn't do it in a correct way, and it had some very negative effects. The ceremony itself was done all wrong, and the preparation of the ayahuasca was not right either. However, before I took it the first time, here we're coming back to the preparation, I had journeyed to the spirit of ayahuasca already and spoken to her, and she had told me that time that she would put me through a death experience. And then in the actual ceremony, the first ceremony that we did, everybody else said nothing happened, and they were so disappointed, and they said it wasn't strong enough, and I had a near-death experience. It was very unpleasant.
Uh-oh. It's that time, Shakti, so hold that right there. We will continue this when we return from this short break. Stay tuned, everyone. Shaman Avalon Sakti, her website, wayofthewildrose.com, dashes between each of those words. Be right back. Truth Brigade Radio. All right, welcome back. Raising a little hell tonight here, Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com, talking about sacred plants tonight with Shaman Avalon Sakti. And Sakti, you left off at talking about your first ayahuasca experience, so please continue.
Yeah, so the first thing I noticed was that I was being shown all these different religious symbols, and as I now know, this was a clearing. Basically, the plants clear out all the religious conditioning that you've had, so that you're completely free to experience reality as it really is. And at that time, I thought I had already cleared all my religious conditioning, but apparently not. And it even showed me symbols of religions that I, like Jewish, Islam and so on, that I didn't have any connection with in this lifetime. So it was clearing not only from this life the religious conditioning, but also from past lives. And this is part of what I wanted to say about to get to higher consciousness, you got to let go of all the conditioning first. Because as long as you have the blinkers on, you really can't see reality the way it is. And the sacred plants do that, especially ayahuasca. And then the other thing it did is it put me through this death experience. I started being like short of breath, and being a yogi, I immediately noticed it, and I tried to make my breath deep and slow, but it didn't work, which is unusual. And then I started having extreme irregular heartbeat and heart racing, and I thought at first, oh my God, what's happening here? It seems that I'm not made for that. Maybe I'm having some, reaction, because I really didn't know enough, and this fake shaman that I was with, he really did not prepare us at all. He just thought it was like a little drug thingy. And I was struggling with this. I had also really strong pain in different areas of my body and in the heart. And all the pain stopped and all the suffering when I surrendered. The moment I surrendered and I accepted that I might even die now, that's when it all stopped.
Okay.
And then it became easy.
So surrender is key.
Yeah, with sacred plants always. If you cannot surrender and you want it your way and you're afraid of having a painful, physically or emotionally painful experience, then you're really not made for that. You have to accept whatever comes, and you have to be willing to experience whatever you need to experience without judging it.
Okay.
And that was my first The second one was interesting because it was very mellow, very mild, even though it was the same brew. So the brew, people always think it's, how much of DMT and other strange substances is there and how much of it do I need per body weight. I think this is total nonsense because the effect of the plant does not depend on any substance that goes in your bloodstream. It depends on the depth of your surrender, the clarity of your intent, and the sacredness of the preparation. These are really the key factors. I once did a ceremony with 3 people, and I was going to do a one-on-one session with one person, and then 2 more people came to my house, and we really didn't have enough, and it ended up with each one. It was Murapuama, which is anyway very mellow. It's not something that takes you over anyway. And we had that preparation before, and it was mild. And then we had so little that we basically, all of us had a shot glass full, and I had half a shot glass.
Oh, wow.
And they were so wiped. So I prayed over it because I knew it wasn't enough. Substance-wise, this was not enough, not even for 2 people, forget about 4. Mm-hmm. And I just prayed over it. I prayed to the goddess, make it enough for us. And they could hardly get up after 3 hours. They said it was so strong. And it had nothing to do with what we took. It had to do with the intent and the empowering of the plant.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this, though. Ayahuasca, isn't that illegal in most countries? I mean, do we have to go to South America or go to the Amazon?
It's been recently made illegal in the UK. I haven't had it for over a year. Just let me mention that. It's being made illegal everywhere, you will see. I would not recommend, if it's illegal in your country, just don't take it, don't get in that trouble. I'm just wanting people to understand what is actually happening to the sacred plants. It is a crime that they are being taken away from us. Because our avenue to universal consciousness, which is our birthright, is being taken away from us. And that's not the only avenue, because you can do the same thing through meditation, not only through the sacred plants, but it is faster with the plants, especially for people who haven't got any concentration and they are very stuck in their ways. The plants seem to break through this barrier to enable them to, for the first time, experience a different reality, the expanded reality. And once they have experienced that, that can be motivation enough for them to maybe start meditation and spiritual practices. I don't think it's good to make oneself dependent on anything, even though these plants are not addictive. But it is not good to be dependent in a sense that you need one particular substance or tool or anything external from yourself to have avenue to cosmic consciousness. If you need that and it's being taken away from you, then you're helpless. So it's always good to train yourself so that all you need is your mind.
Okay. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because, I mean, even so, of course, the plants can help or assist, but it is still kind of a tool or a kind of a quick fix. But anyways, hold that right there. It's that time again. We will be back at the top of the hour with Shaman Avalon Sakti here on Truth Brigade Radio. All right, welcome back. Top of the second hour here tonight with Shaman Sakti, talking about sacred plants and higher consciousness. But we just have a few short minutes this segment here, so continuing on the ayahuasca, it is apparently illegal in most places, but doesn't it only grow in like South America or Central America? South America, excuse me.
Yes, it doesn't grow in Europe. I think we have the wrong climate for it. So the way that it was done by shamans in the UK and all over the place is you had to get the stuff ready cooked from somewhere, which I would never recommend, or you would have to get the ingredients, the actual vine and the leaves, and then cook it yourself. But as it's now illegal, you will have problems getting these ingredients, and I'm not doing any more ceremonies. I'm not having any in my house, and I'm not taking any because I can now have access to ayahuasca just by meditating. I don't need it as a substance anymore because I can connect with the plant anytime. I had it so often that it's part of me. And yeah, it's wonderful. But in the end, as I said, we don't have to be dependent, but I would still like to talk about it a little bit because this plant is the greatest healer plant on the planet. Full stop.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean, everything. Not just emotional and spiritual healing, but physical healing as well. Yes. I've read stories or seen stories, cancer, tumors, pain, all sorts of things. I
was in a ceremony with a lady, and she had breast cancer, and she cried through the whole ceremony, and the next day she told us all that she went back to past lives and the origin of her cancer, and she had a complete remission of her breast cancer. She told me herself. And
there are some people using it to help people who are addicted to like cocaine or crack or heroin, things like that. Don't they also use it to solve addiction problems?
Yes, and it's very logical that it helps for that because usually people turn to drugs because they feel there's something missing in their life, and what is missing is the spiritual connection. And ayahuasca usually doesn't give you a pleasant experience. It's not a tripping plant at all. That's why, I said it can put you through a death experience. It tends to sort the people out and show them their true spiritual connection, and also that they're damaging themselves with these bad drugs, and then they naturally don't want them anymore.
Okay. Let me ask you about mimosa. Because I guess that's used as a substitute where people cannot get ayahuasca.
Which one is that? Is that the Jerima?
Mimosa. I think it might be. Yeah, I know you have different names. Let me see. Jerima might be mimosa.
Probably.
Let me see. Jerima. Yeah, mimosa. Uh-huh.
Okay. That one is different, the experience. It's not so much of a healer plant like the ayahuasca, but it takes...
Uh-oh. Are you there, Sakti? Am I here? I can't hear a thing. Let's see. Oh, I'm here. Okay. So it looks like we just lost Sakti? Okay, wow, weird stuff going on, but we'll get that worked out. Okay, so I know some of the names are different in the UK, and many plants have all different names, like we mentioned. The thorn apple could also be known as stinkweed or devil's trumpet, etc. Oh, but I hear the music, so we will be right back and finish this up when we return. Shaman Avalon Sakti on Truth Brigade Radio. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. If you would like to join us for the text chat tonight, that's over at truthbrigade.com. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call tonight at 402-237-2525. That's 402-AFR-2525. We are talking about sacred plants and higher consciousness tonight with Shaman Avalon Sakti. And the website, I'm telling you, the most invaluable information, very in-depth and detailed. That's wayofthewildrose.com, and there's a dash between each of those words, way-of-the-wild-rose.com, and lots of information about what we're talking about tonight, sacred plants. But woohoo, it looks like we have Sakti back from that little Skype gremlin, or maybe they want some ayahuasca. You think that would make them happy and they'd leave us alone?
I think if they took the real stuff, they would probably learn something from it.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, all right, we left out, or I guess you got cut off when we were talking about the difference between mimosa or jarima and true ayahuasca vine.
Yeah, they are very, very different. I mean, ayahuasca is a healer plant. Jarima isn't exactly. It does work on your consciousness. It takes you into a deep space, into the void. I think it's a goddess plant. That's how I feel it, because it takes you into the deep, earthy energy, the void and the darker emotions. It doesn't mean that you get dark emotions, but whatever that you didn't want to look at, it's going to get it out from the depths.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're saying ayahuasca is more of a healing vine than the mimosa or jarima?
Yes. If you have a physical condition that you want to heal, then you would not go for the jarima so much. You'd rather go for the ayahuasca. But if you want to experience the void and go into the chaos, I don't mean the evil chaos, more like the creation chaos, then the jarima can be a good plant for that. But you have to be able to meditate, and this is really not for beginners. Beginners tend to completely freak out with jarima.
Oh, really? Why is that?
It just takes it to a really dark space, and if you're not afraid of the dark, then that's fine. But if you're afraid of the dark, this will be a horror trip.
Oh, okay, or could be. All right, and I guess the preparation methods. I'm sorry?
Yeah, that of course. The preparation method always makes a great difference. What's going to happen during the ceremony depends a lot on the state of the development of the shaman. I mean, somebody who's on a physically higher level will make a very different preparation from somebody who has this little drug addict mentality or just wants to earn some money. And the way the plant is being handled, from the harvesting to the cooking, and even if it's in the room and ready for the ceremony and people are talking negative things in the room, it does tend to go in the brew. So to have a really good ceremony, everything has to be done very exact. From the harvesting, unfortunately I could never do that myself because I couldn't go to the rainforest and harvest it there. But once you have got the plant harvested, the way where it's even stored, and when you cook it, the people that are around when you cook it, then you have to sing the sacred songs during the cooking, and then there has to be a sacred space before you begin the ceremony. You have to do a banishing ritual to get rid of any negative spirit beings that might be hanging around, and the people should be very focused on their intent, and they should be in a state of purity, physical and mental, when they enter the ceremonial hall, and should really focus on getting benefit for themselves and the healing, instead of looking what their neighbor is doing or interfering with them during the ceremony. If people go and touch others during the ceremony and interfering and talking back and forth with them, then it's not a ceremony.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you said if you need a physical healing, you're going to want to choose the ayahuasca. Why would people choose mimosa or jarima?
Well, sometimes people just want to try something, or they heard from somebody else that it was good. When you mix the two of them together, ayahuasca and jarima, it can make a power experience, a very strong and deep experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier DMT, and of course that's pretty much the main ingredient, but it's also being produced in our brain. But also, what do you think about ingesting, say, smokable DMT? I guess there's a way that people are able to separate or extract it from the plant. Is that something that's used in ceremony, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've never done it, and I would never do it. Even if it was legal and I could get it on the street corner for 10 cents, I wouldn't take it.
Okay, and why would you never try it?
Well, this is not the plant spirit. This is a chemical substance, then I might as well take pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering about that. I've read a little bit about the preparation online. Of course, I did have a chance to talk with somebody that does make it, and I asked him, well, what happens when you're adding these chemicals? And they tried to tell me that it evaporates and that it doesn't affect the plant at all. But you're saying the opposite, that it does affect it.
A plant is like a living being. You've got arms and legs. If somebody cuts off a part, it's not the same thing anymore. All the different components that the plant has, they work together as a whole. And if you isolate one single component, you will get side effects and it won't be the same. And this is also not a sacred preparation. This is the way of the lazy man, and it's the shortcut, and the shortcut never leads to the same place. Not with shamanism and not with attaining higher consciousness, because there isn't really a shortcut for higher consciousness.
Isn't that the truth? Okay, yeah, well, you confirmed my suspicions, because it just, okay, well, I mean, and then speaking of media and such, we have people like Joe Rogan who have kind of popularized it, and we even had a gentleman on my show talking about smoking DMT, and, we occasionally hear it on other shows, but that's not the sacred natural way. You're saying that's kind of a shortcut. Why would people be popularizing it so much?
Well, it's easy. Anybody could do it, isn't it? You just have to take the stuff. There's no long preparation involved. For ayahuasca, you're actually busy for 2 days preparing it.
Well, I guess whoever is making or extracting it, that takes some type of preparation, but I forget what it is. It's something like paint thinner, or I don't know.
Where are the prayers? Where are the sacred songs? And I'm sure the plant doesn't like it to be treated like this. You're not connecting with the spirit of the plant anymore. There is no more spirit. It's only chemical reaction. And when there's no more spirit,
so it's basically the same as smoking crack.
Well, I don't even know these things. To tell you the truth, I'm totally illiterate when it comes to street drugs. I've never taken any, and I haven't got a clue about them.
I wouldn't be able to educate you on that myself, but it's either cocaine or crystal or one of the ones that people normally do up their nose, and then I don't know what they do, actually, so if somebody does know, call in, but maybe they mix it with, like, baking soda or something and make it in, like, a rock, and then they smoke it.
I've never taken any of these things. However, I have met people who did, and I can tell you they all ended up very messed up in their mind.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to try or go close to anything like that, and for a reason. I have met people that have, and no offense if you are one of those people, but I've seen it destroy lives completely. But, I mean, what you're saying about the process and of the extracting the DMT with the chemical solvents and such, it kind of sounds to me like it's the same as like cocaine or crack or one of those.
It never works when you extract something. It's not the same as if you have the whole thing, because you need to connect with the spirit of the plant. And it has to be done in a sacred way, that throughout the whole preparation you have to pray to the spirit of the plant and sing the sacred songs that this particular plant has, or the ones that the plant has taught you. And this is not the case with anything that's made in a lab. And I would be very cautious, even ayahuasca, and there are very few people that I would trust to prepare it for me. Actually, the only one I really trust is if I do it myself, and there's one other shaman that I trust to prepare it right. Other than that, I wouldn't take it from other people, because if they're not in a good spiritual state, then I know that it's not going to give me that much benefit at all.
Okay.
And so this is something to consider, whether there's been a sacred preparation, and if not, you're not dealing with sacred plants, you're dealing with a drug trip. The only way...
So that's what it seems they're trying to popularize with the big names, working out in the gym all day, smoking DMT at night, and that's not really how it was intended. And you're kind of dishonoring these sacred plants and all of the magical abundance and wisdom and insight that they have for us.
Yeah, and that then gives a bad name to those people who really do it in a sacred way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm now... Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about, that Salvia, the Miley Cyrus thing, and she's some, I guess, little actress, entertainer, singer or something. Probably a teenager, but I don't know. I don't catch up with Hollywood either. Someone posted this in our forum at truthbrigade.org, but the video, it was really... I felt bad for her because she's in a position like that, but there's no way. It just makes me wonder, what are they trying to do? Hollywood and the media with Salvia, DMT, pretending that people who are high and drinking beer and partying and, acting like, well, probably typical, 19-year-old kids who, are going out and partying away from their parents for the first time. It just makes me what they're trying to do. And, obviously they're demonizing it. They're taking away the innate value and wonder and just, turning it into this yucky, perverted, drug-type culture mentality.
And it's not like that at all. I have seen people really completely changing for the better, becoming better people through working with the sacred plants. People who hated their parents loved them and saw that they were wrong for hating their parents. People who blamed others understood that they had nobody to blame but themselves. And this doesn't happen when you take a substance. When you take a substance, you have a trip and then it's over and you're the same you, maybe even worse than before. But if you do the sacred plants in the right way, they change you. And it is not always pleasant when they change you, because the ego wants to hold on to the old patterns and wants to be always right and not admit that you might have done something wrong. And then the plants show it to you. I remember one man, he was really crying because he said he hated his mother and he blamed her for everything in his life, and he decided he hadn't seen her for years, and he said he saw that his mother had always loved him and that it was he himself who was wrong, and he wanted to go and see her again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a spiritual thing. It's a spiritual thing.
Absolutely. Okay. All right, so we've talked about, ayahuasca, jarima, mimosa, salvia. We kind of touched on that. Can you tell us a little bit more about salvia and what it entails and why one would choose to smoke salvia?
Yeah, this is a plant that can show you different things. One of the things that it's very good at is to release negative identities. So you pray with the plant to release negative identities, such as maybe you have a victim complex or you got a martyr complex. And once you have your intent clear that you want to get rid of the idea that you are a loser or that you are a victim or whatever it is that doesn't serve you anymore, you pray to the plant to release that, and then you smoke it, and then you meditate with it. The first time I had it, I remember that it was very mild, but it showed me visions. And I'd like to clarify here, the visions. It's not that these are pictures that I, under normal circumstances, never see, because I do get visions all the time. I get them when I'm in the forest, I get them when I'm meditating, I get them when I look in the water or at the clouds, I get visions. But anyway, so it showed me visions, and the visions that it showed me seemed at first very trivial, because it showed me all these houses. One looked like the other with a neat lawn in front and a mailbox, and then I realized what it was doing. It was showing me the kind of a bit like the American dream, even though I'm not American. It was showing me that how we are all made the same, and we think we have to have the house and the car and the dog and the 2.5 statistical children, and that this whole reality is completely false. This is not what we are here for.
Okay, now salvia, I mentioned the Miley Cyrus one, but it was also in the media recently, maybe 2 months ago, where they publicized 2 kids went and smoked it, I guess in Pennsylvania, and one of them fell off a cliff and died.
I mean, don't do a sacred ceremony sitting at the edge of a cliff, yeah?
Well, I mean, and that's what's so funny about it, because the Miley Cyrus one, there's no way. I mean, they said in Pennsylvania that the guy, kind of passed out or lost consciousness, and from what I've seen, that seems pretty typical. You're not really capable. You kind of lose your motor skills for a moment.
It's not the case like this with me, because I react differently with sacred plants than most other people. I've noticed that even on the strongest ayahuasca and things, I can shift completely I can shift back and forth between the two different states of consciousness, the plant consciousness and my normal waking consciousness. If, for example, I need to go to the toilet and leave the room, I will be able to walk just like normal. And as soon as I sit down again, then the meditation continues as if it has never stopped. But I have heard that some people can't move with Salvia divinorum. Generally, if you want to take such a plant, you get
yourself I'm sorry, Shakti. Yeah, I'm sorry, honey. It's that time. Hold that right there. We'll return after this short break. Truth Brigade Radio. Right. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com, talking about sacred plants and higher consciousness with our special guest, Shaman Avalon Sakti. And the website is wayofthewildrose.com, and there's a dash between each of those words, way-of-the-wild-rose.com. Excellent information on there, and especially about sacred plants, what we're talking about tonight here. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call at 402-237-2525. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat, that's over at truthbrigade.com. Shakti, I believe we left off on preparing for a safe Salvia experience.
Yes, I mean, you want to be undisturbed. You want to have set up sacred space, and of course, you don't want anything dangerous around. You're not going to have knives lying around in the room or be by the edge of a cliff, and you're not going to get in your car and drive it or operate your lawnmower. You're going to stay put in your room, and where there's nothing dangerous, where you can fall down, and you have to set your intention that you're not going to run around in the room. People who run around and freak out are people who haven't emotionally and mentally prepared, and people who are not surrendering. If you're surrendering, there's no need to run anywhere.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that cliff thing. And, I had an experience where a couple people that was in the same place I was ended up smoking that. And this was in a backyard setting. And they were sitting on, regular chairs that are in people's backyards, plastic chairs or what have you. And both, kind of passed out and rolled over and didn't even remember anything. It was kind of scary. Probably not the optimal circumstances to try using a sacred herb.
With those ones where you can be completely gone, which is possible with Salvia, though it did never happen to me, probably because my state of consciousness is different. But with those plants, you just want to be in a position where you are already lying, that nothing can happen.
Mm-hmm. So like a bed or a couch or something, or a floor even?
Yes, obviously. And of course, needless to say, you shouldn't have had any alcohol or any other things that are not compatible with the plant. You should have fasted and not overloaded your stomach. And you shouldn't mix it with other things. And you shouldn't mix it with other...
Do not do what Miley Cyrus did, that whole drinking and screaming, and that is not a proper method for Salvia.
No, anybody who's screaming is not surrendering. And anybody who's drinking isn't doing anything sacred.
Okay. All right.
But I think a lot of the problems with Salvia that I've heard of and that you maybe have heard of have to do with people not actually taking the real Salvia but the extract. So we come back to the same thing as with the extracted DMT. This is not a sacred shamanic ceremony, but this is a drug addict's dream.
Oh, okay. So there's a difference between real salvia. They also make an extract?
There is an extract, and they have like 4 times, 8 times strength and things like this. I've heard of it.
Okay, so how would you know? Let's say you're in a state where it is legal and you can go to the store and buy it. How do you know which is natural and which is an extract or extracted form?
Well, if it's natural, it's green leaves. They look a little bit like nettle leaves when they are dried.
Okay,
and
so
nothing
dark
else.
green.
And the extract, as far as I understand, can be a liquid. I'm not quite sure, tell you the truth. I'm not experienced with the drugs. I do know about the herbs. But
yeah, I haven't seen a lot of, I don't have a huge experience with salvia myself, but the time that I did see it, it almost looked black. It was definitely darker than nettle.
I had my own plant once, and I had some leaves from that, and that was green.
Okay, well, speaking of plants, because one thing I read is that they can't grow it from seed, that all the salvia that people get supposedly all came from the same plant.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well. It's very interesting.
Okay, so how did you get a clipping of it?
I didn't get a clipping. That time I was living in Germany, and you could order it from a mail order. Yeah, I didn't get it in a mysterious shamanic way, like going to the woods and finding it. Sorry, I just ordered it.
Okay, so you ordered it online. Okay, all right. I didn't know that was available because I'm just starting to learn about this myself. So
I don't know whether it's available now because
there's one seed, there's one plant. That's a little bit scary, you know. Especially if Monsanto owned that one plant. I don't know if I want it.
I actually think we have to protect the sacred plants and hide them and make sure they're not getting everything. But to come back to it, I didn't actually buy the plant because I thought of smoking it. I wanted it as a plant familiar, just to be there so I could meditate with it. And I had leaves. Later on, I bought leaves when they were available, and they were just dried leaves and in very small quantities. But then what happened is that my plant unfortunately died. But when it died in such a way that it desiccated its own leaves. It was very weird. So I thought I might as well make use of it, and I harvested them. And it lasted me for quite long. I didn't take this salvia very often. It's now also illegal here, so you can't get it anymore and you can't do it anymore. I've heard that it's illegal. I don't know, but I think it is now. But it is a very good plant because it can help you to let go of identities. And I had once a very good experience with it where I found myself in the rainforest. It's very powerful. It's like one moment I was in my body and the next moment it was like a shamanic journey, but I just popped into a canoe with a shaman and a little girl. And I could somehow read the thoughts of the little girl, and the little girl was thinking whether she had created me by thinking of, because she was thinking of people in the West, how they live in the West. And I was wondering whether I was imagining this girl and she was real. It was so funny. And it makes you start to wonder, like, am I the king who had a dream that he was a butterfly, or am I the butterfly who's dreaming it's a king? You start to wonder what is real and what is not, and so it helps you
traveling to another dimension, so to speak, perhaps?
Yeah, it was like that.
Okay. Wow. All right. Okay. So
but I could have got up any time. I could have got up any time from my couch if I'd wanted to. But why should I want to? I was enjoying this.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're kind of running short on time here, and you mentioned several other sacred plants. If you would, can you tell us about mandrake and why people would choose to use mandrake?
Mandrake is a power plant. I first was told about it by one of my guides when I was going through a very rough time, and I wasn't even told to take it. I was first only told to find it, and I thought I have to use it maybe in magic, so I didn't think I could find it, but I found it the very same day. And then I was told how to prepare it for myself. It was a very low dosage, and I needed to fast a whole day, actually, before it, with absolutely no food. And I found it very empowering. It can put you in touch with your power. If it's done in the right way, you can't take very large quantities. It's kind of toxic, and it can negatively affect your liver. So this is something you can't do very often. This is like a once in a while and in a low dosage. And you have to have proper preparation, and you have to have guidance that this is what you need to do. You don't just do it because somebody else does it or because you want to try it out.
Okay, and how do you do? Is it leaves? Is it roots? Is it how do you smoke it? Do you drink it? Eat it?
Root. It's a root, and you have to boil the root for a certain time. And I would never use anything. Yes. Usually you get the root chopped in little pieces, and then you boil it. You make a decoction. I would never take the powder. I'm totally against taking any powder things because you don't know what's been mixed in there, and with the powder you can take too much, so it gets too intense because it goes too deep in your tissues. I'm always for working with the herb as it is. In this case, in Mandrake, it's the root that is used, not the leaves.
Okay, so it's basically the same preparation like a tea or a brew like ayahuasca or mimosa?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Now, is Mandrake, has that been made illegal everywhere, or can people go in the forest and pick it?
I wouldn't know where to find it here. It's, as far as I know, it's not yet illegal, but I tell you that here in Europe, in April next year, they will outlaw not just any plants that can change your consciousness or that might be toxic. They're going to outlaw all the herbs, and Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine will be made illegal as of April next year, as well as books on herbs and healing. So we're going into a total pharmaceutical dictatorship, and a lot of common herbs that like peppermint and chamomile and your rosemary and lavender are likely to end up illegal, and they're going to do this incrementally. At the moment, they're starting with the consciousness expanding plants. But it is already in the making that garlic and ginger are on the list of Codex Alimentarius of plants to be banned. And I think they will either try to ban them outright, or they will just not be on the market so you can't buy them, or they will give you a GM version of it so that you don't have anything powerful and positive for your health anymore.
Yeah, I know. I know they have all these different bills, like 510 and everything, where people are going to think we're going to wake up one day and, cilantro or a rosemary, lemon balm, basil, whatever, everything's going to be illegal. But I think right now they're regulating just the supplements. And in my opinion, we really shouldn't, if our diets are intact, we don't need to take pill supplements, right?
Yeah, I thought that as well, but for some people the supplements can be important because they have malabsorption or specific reasons, maybe recuperating after a longer illness, so that this can be useful for them. When I first heard that the supplements were being banned, I was not concerned because I hadn't taken any for several years, and I thought, but with a healthy diet alone it will be okay. But the plants have been so changed, and they're grown on depleted soils that they don't really have that many nutrients anymore. And then we're getting all these chemtrails and the aluminium that's coming down from the sky and the other heavy metals. So our bodies are very toxic now. And the supplements can help people to detox and to stay healthy when we're living in a poisoned world. And I think just the very fact that somebody is deciding that they're going to take that away from us is wrong.
Well, it's totally wrong, but I really don't understand why people go and get garlic pills when they can just go to the ground and grab some garlic, or why they get red clover and dandelion or milk thistle pills when they can just go outside and pick the weed, as is. I mean, because once again, you're explaining the difference between ayahuasca and then the extracted DMT, it's been altered. And when we're taking the natural, okay, it looks good on the bottle, woohoo, it says it's milk thistle or nettles or whatever, but it's also been altered, has it not? I mean, just to be put in pill form with the stabilizers and food colorings and everything else. But it's that time. We're going to be right back after this short break. Shaman Avalon Sakti here on Truth Brigade Radio. Right, welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. And my goodness, how time flies. This is the last segment with our special guest tonight, Avalon Sakti. The website is wayofthewildrose.com. Don't forget the dashes between each of those words, wayofthewildrose.com. And Sakti had so much more we wanted to talk about tonight, so we are going to bring her back to do part 2 of this, January, 19th, 2011, so we will continue the discussion on the sacred plants, because once again, we just barely scratched the surface, but I guess we left off on mandrake, and you said it's similar, it's a root, and you would prepare it similar to ayahuasca or mimosa as a tea?
Yeah.
Should I assume it's the same type of mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical preparation? No. Okay.
You have to be careful with the food, but only one day before is enough. But you have to be clear that this is one of the more dangerous plants. Ayahuasca is not dangerous. Mandrake is.
Oh, really? So what are there side effects, or what are the dangers?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how strong you make it, but it can have side effects. It can give you nausea. It can give you visual distortion, double vision. And I didn't get it when I prepared it myself. I had it once when somebody else prepared it. That was not good for me. When I had my own, I didn't have the visual distortion. It makes the eyes very dry in the mouth. So these are some of the side effects. You need water nearby because you will get very dehydrated. And it is not visual, so you're not going to get any visions. If you think there'll be fireworks or it makes you go into an alternate dimension, no. It can bring up emotions. For me, it triggered the Kundalini, which already was going at that time, but that probably wasn't a good time. When I took it with somebody else, I took it when I had active Kundalini, and that made things go haywire. Mm-hmm. I ended up having a complete cathartic emotional release that was very difficult to handle.
Okay. All right. That's, okay, so mandrake. And, we can go further in depth next time we talk about this as well, but just to kind of skim the surface. Another one, you call it thorn apple, and we call it devil's trumpet, devil's weed, or datura, which is more commonly known. Can you tell us about some of the uses of datura, or... what do you call it again? Thorn apple.
First of all, I'd like to say that it's sacred to Shiva, and this is why I took it in the first place. It's a sacred plant to Shiva, and it's worshipped by Shaivites, people who worship Shiva. They hold the plant sacred. And this is a very dangerous plant, so let's discuss it, but just in a scholarly interest rather than as an instruction manual for people, because I've heard of people, they smoked 3 thorn apple seeds and went completely crazy.
Wow.
But what it does when it's properly done, it can help you with astral projection and And it also helps to let go of limitations, basically, in your mind. And the plant is very poisonous. And the seeds are more dangerous than I've never taken the leaves. The seeds are more dangerous than the leaves. So this is something you should only do if you are an experienced shaman, if you have had inner guidance, and if you're working with a plant in a sacred way. This should never be done for the fun of it or to try it out, because then it can go wrong.
Okay, so I guess when using datura, it would be the seeds and the leaves, and it's to smoke, not to drink or eat.
There are also preparations where you can drink it. I've never done that. If you familiar with the Carlos Castaneda books, he's actually talking about an experience where they prepared the roots and the seeds and the leaves, and he had quite a horror experience with it in the book. I did never have a horror experience with this plant. It is not toxic to me either, probably because I worship Shiva, and I have never had a trip on it. Let's just clarify that. I just use it for dreaming, basically. I've never had a vision.
Dreams then.
Yeah, and to get dreams on the topic that I wanted, or when I need specific guidance. That's how I take it. And but I've known of people who couldn't handle. So this is not something I want to instruct anybody in. Here's my disclaimer: if you take it, it's on your own, risk. These plants, they are all sacred to particular gods and goddesses. I'm not sure about Salvia divinorum, but I know thorn apple is sacred to Shiva. It's also sacred to Hecate, and I'm a priestess of Hecate. And mandrake is sacred to Hecate, and so is henbane.
Okay.
And so if you have a connection to a particular deity, sometimes you can connect by taking their sacred plants, and then if you do it in a devotional way, this will work very different from somebody who's just wanting to have a kick. People who do this with the wrong intention often get punished by the sacred plants anyway.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, I guess that's where we're going to have to leave off tonight. But once again, we will be continuing this topic with Shaman Avalon Sakti. That'll be January 19th, 2011. Shakti, thank you so much for your time and wisdom. Always such a delight to have you join us and fill us with your sweet spirit. But once again, the website is wayofthewildrose.com, dashes. Don't forget the dashes between each of those words, wayofthewildrose.com. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Abundant blessings and love to all. Have a wonderful weekend. We will see you next week. Same time, same place. Truth Brigade Radio.
Now